Hi, my name is Eric Stahl. I am a Buchholz Fellow with the Committee of 70, and I am here to welcome Antonetta Stancu to the C70 Studios series. Antonetta is running for District Attorney in Bucks County, and welcome to Studio C70. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Antonetta Stancu, as you said. I have been a criminal lawyer for 17 years. I practice defense work now, but prior to that, I had been a prosecutor for 16 years. Started my career in the Bronx in New York, and then had the privilege of working under President Barack Obama as a federal prosecutor before returning home to my roots in Pennsylvania. And I spent 8 years as a deputy DA in Bucks County.
Great. Wow. So you've worked in the Bucks County DA, as you say, including during the tenure of Matt Weintraub, who's the incumbent you would be running against in the general election. So I have to ask, what's your opinion of his tenure? Where do you disagree with him? What policies or other stances would you change?
So Eric, I think overall, the biggest sort of change that I'd love to see in that office is really being more of a proactive and innovative office. For as long as I know in the history of Bucks County, the DA's office has operated on a reactionary basis. So we'll see, initiatives started after, god awful incidents that occur here. And so oftentimes we're way behind the ball and we're finding ourselves in a position where it's too late. So I'd like to see the office go in a direction of really being much more proactive instead of reactive. And I think that means interacting with your community, acknowledging that times change constantly and that the needs of the community changes, and you've got to be one step ahead.
So you talked about innovation a little bit. There's been a lot of changes and innovations in prosecutors' offices in the last couple decades. Where do you look? What offices or DAs do you follow or you see as leading the field in improving criminal justice?
So as I said, I've had the pleasure of working in Bronx County, New York, which is a very large office. I worked under DA Rob Johnson, who was the first African-American elected district attorney in New York. And it gave a perspective while working in that office of really making sure that you acknowledge that the system only works with the trust of the community. And that sort of attitude and that upbringing as a prosecutor, I'll say, is what led me into my role as a federal prosecutor as well. And knowing that you're there to serve the community and making sure that that trust is really established. So I've had really great role models as far as offices to look at and look at how they were run. More locally, we've got some great neighbors who are making great changes. But truly, I believe Bucks County needs to be the leader in the area. Every community is different. Every community has different needs. And because of that, I would like to see the Bucks County District Attorney's Office be that office that everyone else turns to.
So could you talk more about being proactive as a prosecutor? Because it's, you would think, a reactionary office. People commit crimes, you prosecute the crimes they commit. You talked about working with the community. Can you talk about that more? What does it mean to be a proactive prosecutor?
Well, I think number one, it's identifying what the issues that are plaguing the community at that time are. We have truly, to say it's a new issue is inaccurate, but we're seeing more so than ever mental health really be an issue. And it's an issue, frankly, that we've been battling for a decade or more. And how it's so intertwined and interwoven with the drug system is key. We've seen counties around us repeatedly have mental health courts, behavioral health courts, diversionary programs that incorporate mental health all around us, and yet we still don't have a mental health court yet up and running. And that's a big problem. That's the perfect example of when I say we're behind the ball. This is an issue that we need to be ahead of. And now we find ourselves coming out, hopefully, of a pandemic where this issue is larger than ever, without a place, and I see it as a defense attorney, without a place to turn for individuals who are really suffering. And so that's key. Finding out not only that we need to address and help individuals with mental health, but trying to figure out what is the best way to do that. Having a court where somebody who commits a crime and has mental health issues can go to is good, but it's not enough. We need to be making sure that we have training all across the board in the district attorney's office, in our police departments, that we give our officers resources to be able to respond to cases appropriately where mental health is an issue. And frankly, make sure, and that's what I mean by proactive, try to get to the problem before a crime is committed.
You said a lot of things I want to touch on there. I know I spoke to Matt Weintraub about the mental health court. He said it was coming. Do you have any thoughts on where that stands, or what it should look like?
Well, my thoughts are, first off, I'm saddened that it's still not here. As I said, we're coming out of a pandemic, and I'm seeing a number of clients who are now finding themselves in the criminal justice system because of mental health related issues, and many of whom turn to drugs to try to self-medicate. And so I wish it was here already. I don't know what the criteria will be. They haven't necessarily been published for the criminal defense bar for us to know. But what I will say is, again, it's not enough. We need diversionary programs. We need programs early on. We need resources early on. We need to be able to have resources for these clients who, by the way, were arrested for these issues. We're in May. So what do they do until this court is open from now until the fall, when they do have, hopefully they will have resources at their fingertips. So it's just, as I said, I want to see more. I want to see acknowledgement that mental health is a real crisis, that many that suffer from addiction also suffer from mental health. And so those two ideas shouldn't be mutually exclusive. It's great that we have a drug court. It's great that we have a mental health court. We really need to be making sure that they work together. Same with our diversionary programs, because so often, mental health and drug addiction go hand in hand.
Of course. You also talked about training police officers. I know you've been endorsed for the primary by the Bucks County FOP. What do you think a DA's relationship should be with law enforcement? And given the scrutiny that police departments are under current events and nationwide, do DAs have a responsibility to supervise and dare I say regulate in some ways police departments that they have to work with?
Eric, I think DAs have an obligation to work with those police departments to make sure that the community's needs are best served. And I mean every member of the community, from every citizen and every police officer. You're right, our officers are getting scrutinized, and I believe it's because they're not getting enough resources, they're not getting enough training, and they're not necessarily having the communication between, building that bridge between the community and the law enforcement. I think the DA's role is to be that bridge. The DA's role is to go to the citizens, to hear what the citizens want, what the citizens need, what we can do to better the lives of our community, and then to be the voice for those citizens with police departments. And in some cases, the reverse as well. Working together is key. So as far as supervising the police departments, the way that the police departments are set up in Bucks County, where they're each individual municipalities, I don't think it's an appropriate term, but I will say it is not uncommon, and it should be that DAs issue memos, talk to police departments, understand where they're coming from, and discuss policies that can be put in place where there are universal standards.
So I think it would be fair to say that we've learned as a criminal justice community that we shouldn't just judge a prosecutor's office by their conviction rates. So what would you, as a veteran of 3 different offices, point to? What do you look at to know this office is doing a good job? Because it does seem like there's just so many separate cases. How do you know a prosecutor's office is doing well?
Well, I do think it's okay to look at results, not necessarily conviction rates, but results. So, we've put a lot of resources over the last 4 or 5 years into drug diversionary programs. But the results show, the statistics show that drug use has not gone down. So what we're doing isn't working. I believe it's because we need to incorporate more mental health into those diversionary programs. From the same aspect, we also have to make sure that our community has that understands what's happening, and that transparency is key. Real transparency, a real understanding of what's actually happening. We're seeing things like gun violence increase, crimes against family and children increase. So those are very real rates that we can point to say something needs to change.
Some of the neighboring counties and Bucks have made it a point to change their stance on drug crimes and convictions, and move as far away as really taking down the number of drug cases that they charge. Is that something that you would consider as a DA? Do you think that that's the other side of the coin for drug cases?
As I have to tell you, as a defense attorney now, I'm seeing a very large amount of marijuana cases, possession of marijuana cases. And in several cases, it is individuals who possess medical marijuana cards. And they're getting prosecuted for having loose marijuana, or the paraphernalia, or improperly packaged marijuana. I have said that I wholeheartedly support these cases not being charged. And it's, it is somewhat of a vicious cycle. I have a client who was on Social Security disability because of a back injury, which was the reason that he had his medical marijuana card, due to the pain. However, what I learned was medical marijuana is expensive, particularly for somebody who's not working. And so this client had a loose bag of street marijuana, illegal marijuana, that was to be used to help with the pain. He was arrested and charged. And although he qualified for the ARD diversionary program, he had to pay for the program, obviously. It cost him almost $2,000 to be able to get into this program, which was another hardship, on top of the fact he wasn't working. So this cycle of not working, Social Security disability, and then having the loose marijuana, the amount of anxiety that it caused him was huge. And then on the flip side, to weigh that with the amount of resources that were expended into that case, it just seems frankly senseless.
Yeah. How do you make sure, as a prosecutor individually, that you're avoiding bias, whether it's racial or ethnic, gender, and then how do you apply that? How would you apply that as a district attorney across an office? What steps would you take?
So I think first and foremost is increasing diversity in the office itself. I find, my parents are immigrants. I'm a mom. So when I come across a client, or, when I was a prosecutor, a victim who came from an immigrant background, I connected it in a certain way. Same thing with, having a client who's a mom, I connect in that way with them. So I think making sure that you have representation from the different, parts of our community is key, because that's how someone's going to be able to speak up and speak for the voice of that community and what it is that that community wants to see. But in addition to that, I think it's key to make sure you have constant communication with your citizens. Having community prosecution plans. So meaning having a prosecutor who goes out into the community, who talks to the community members so that they know who it is that's fighting for justice in their townships, in their municipalities, asking them, what is it that is, an issue here? What do you need to see addressed? I think that's key. I think training is obviously important, constant training, not a one-time deal. But frankly, Eric, you can't untrain racism. You can't untrain. You can make people aware of biases, but they exist. And so understanding that they exist and understanding that all voices are heard, I believe, is the key to making sure you have a fair and equitable office.
So are the Bucks ADAs, are they distributed or assigned by geographic region? Are they assigned by community? Because you talked about kind of a community prosecuting model.
They are not. So in Bucks County, the assistant DAs are divided by division. So the type of crime that would come in. So there are sex crime prosecutors, major crime prosecutors, economic crime prosecutors. So they're not divided up by region. Sometimes, for example, I was the chief of major crimes, and I would develop relationships with certain police departments that I worked with through those major crimes cases. And when that happened, it actually benefited the community. I knew the police officers involved. I knew the areas that were involved. And in many cases, I knew the neighbors that were involved and could, speak to the neighbors one-on-one with that trust being built. So I saw firsthand how important it is for the community to have that mutual trust.
So final question, because I think you've been generous with your time already, and we're probably already over.
Oh, that's okay. It's my pleasure.
One thing district attorneys can do, which is very rare, and only is really otherwise reserved to governors and presidents, is to look back at older sentences, older convictions, and look at the evidence again, and potentially move to vacate sentences or have them reconsidered. Do you believe that that's a responsibility that you would take on as a DA when it comes to older cases, some which would predate you? Obviously, almost all of which would predate you if you become DA.
Absolutely. I think, look, the law is constantly changing too. Our discovery rules have changed. DNA has changed. So there is always an obligation to make sure that you have assistants or, attorneys who are looking back to make sure that the integrity of cases is in fact kept. Again, it all stems on trust. It all stems on the fact that the system doesn't work unless the community trusts the system.
And is a dedicated conviction integrity or conviction review unit something you would consider?
It is. I think currently there's an appellate division in the district attorney's office, and often the appellate division will review cases that are, brought before it by motion or by an attorney bringing up a particular issue. But oftentimes, legally there isn't a mechanism to get that motion before that unit. So I think acknowledging the fact that you need to have somebody proactively taking that step is key.
Well, Antonetta, thank you so much for talking to us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving your time and all of this information, and good luck in the primary.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.